is a dream. All my life for this to well. Yeah!
Following Arman's withdrawal the day before the fight, moved back into the lightweight category. The initial plan was to avenge his loss to Jack, but the journey turned into a much more significant challenge. This period, spanning several difficult months, felt endless, lasting what seemed like years. Islam had vacated his belt in preparation for moving up to lightweight, insisting on fighting only for the official title. His ambition was to reach 77 kilograms, but the strict new UFC rules prohibited a champion from moving up without first vacating their current belt. This led to a lengthy wait for the Bilal Muhammad fight, which ultimately didn't happen. Interestingly, since his loss to Jack, Bilal hasn't trained with Khabib's team even though they are based in America, as he now shares the same weight class as Islam. I believe Bilal made the right decision to avoid potential future conflicts. I have no evidence, but I claim that he converted to Islam after losing to Bilal. That night, Islam was ecstatic, having watched live as Jack declared his intent to avenge his earlier loss to Volk before this new challenge. Intense tweets followed, and the countdown to this confrontation began. Dana White was absent from the press conference that night, making final arrangements before announcing a few days later in a live broadcast the news that astonished me. Islam had vacated the lightweight title. With the lightweight future somewhat clarified, Islam Makhachev disappeared into the Dagestani suburbs, training diligently like an athlete preparing his physique for the middleweight class. Coincidentally, an entire village was built alongside the camp with streets named after fighters. It was amusing to hear Islam complain about power outages and electricity generator costs. The second camp was held at the Minash and Nas Integrated Facility in Dubai, a regular training spot since Khabib's fighting days in Abu Dhabi. This camp primarily centered around fighters participating in PF and AUW events. Honestly, the performance of most of these fighters was quite disappointing, especially Ima Shamelthiani, who lost to an unknown fighter from Wales. The only one who truly impressed us was Chanko Ojan, whose performance in the Contender Series earned him a UFC contract from Dana. The third camp began more than 3 weeks before his fight against Imamjak. Islam arrived in New York as the city prepared for the final mayoral debate between Zadar Mendani and Andrew Cuomo. Of course, Islam did not stay in the politically charged capital, but headed to New Jersey, where he usually trains at the Joker Club. If the right wing laments New York's fall to a Muslim left-wing socialist, how will the martial arts community react if Islam is called to fight for the light middleweight title in Madison Square Garden, which they called the Mecca of sports halls?
I'm picking him to beat Islam. I think that Craig Jones is the answer in this.
You could argue that Bilal Muhammad is a bigger, stronger version of Islam Makhachev. And I'm telling you, Islam Makhachev, he's in for a very, very tough fight here.
Islam تو دانمارک‌دا دوام دستگستانشی او اسپرماشی.
Despite the challenges, Islam appeared confident, in high spirits, and enjoying every moment of the camp, as if he wasn't about to enter the most important fight of his career. Releasing the belt seemed to have removed immense pressure from his shoulders, and of course the significant advantage of not needing to cut weight cannot be overlooked. In all the interviews he conducted before fight week, Islam was respectful towards Jack and he did not underestimate him, having clearly learned his lesson from his first fight with Volk. While Islam was quietly fishing in New Jersey legs, Jack, in contrast, was quite hostile at his statements. Unlike Islam, who arrived early in the state, Jack arrived in New York just days before fight week, traveling from his hometown of Perth, the city where Islam and Jack first met more than 2 years ago, behind the scenes of the UFC 284 conference. And guess who's back in New York? Yes, it's Craig Jones, who, as usual, joined the camp and was manipulating everyone in training sessions. This training session was even published on the UFC channel in the second episode of A Muhammad. But imagine if they completely hid Craig, as if he wasn't there. Craig expressed his dissatisfaction with this post, stating, "They cut me out of the ring and hid my sponsor." On Monday, the right wing believes that Mamdani will take over the city. Then Islam went to one of New York City's landmarks, where he faced the 77-kilogram champion, Jock Della Maddalena. For the first time, this confrontation was a great disappointment for Islam's detractors, because he didn't seem as vulnerable as they had hoped. In fact, he may have appeared more massive than Jack, and that was enough. During this calm confrontation, Islam spoke about the extreme cold in the city. I don't know if he was trying to break the tension or if this phrase had other dimensions that night. Ali Abdelaziz reintroduced Aiden Ross to Camp Islam to film another live broadcast with him, and I wish he had replaced him with Snako. Many funny situations from this broadcast were recirculated on social networking sites. Of course, it wouldn't be Fight Week if we did not witness humorous exchanges between Khabib and DC. But of course, Ali Abdelaziz had to steal the spotlight from his fighters, as usual, even going so far as to commit a crime lying on air. As the UFC continued to hide Creed from the edited episodes, on Tuesday, the fighters arrived to perform their media duties. Islam received his modified pants, which he wore in his fight against Mokanko, while the champion, who barely received any media attention in those days, would wear his regular pants like the heroes, but this time with a nude Venom design. There's another testament to what is well said. Islam almost broke his new weight category record among UFC fighters in all their weight categories on this device during the media interviews they conducted. Islam and Jack show great respect for each other. Nothing new is mentioned, nothing old is repeated.
The second Wednesday of November marked the second annual UFC. It coincided with the press conference day for the UFC 322 event, where Islam was in high spirits. The smile never left his face. He only needed to lose about 5 kilograms to reach 77 kilograms. At the symposium, Islam spoke about a number of topics, from his first encounter with Jack to the bruise that never left his eye. But what caught my attention most was his statement, repeated dozens of times in the past days. He is ready to fight standing with Jack in any case of failed wrestling attempt. These words caused me post-traumatic effects. I remember the Canelo hands theory Bilal brought up that fateful week. Either Jack fabricates a seat on this chair, or the interview was more than usual, and it was clear he is not the star of what this event is about, Islam Makhachev. Then we saw the amazing physical condition Islam was in, and a large difference in muscle mass between now and January, before his fight with Arman. However, I was afraid that this increase would exhaust him if we entered the championship rounds. Of course, there is no comment. Jack was in great physical condition. Then, Islam continued to accept his media duties with all openness, especially in the interview with DC, which was delayed. Their meetings are not without funny situations. During those interviews, Islam sent a challenge to Crick Jones, great MMA. Unfortunately, we can show you Crick's response to it, with the betting scandal involving USFC 2 weeks ago, and the FBI entering the investigation. I thought the UFC would move away somewhat from the world of betting, but on Thursday, the opposite happened. It was announced that Dana White was returning from the Arabic Island from Wall Street in New York for a partnership with Polymarket, and this company is not for regular betting. You can even bet and watch the fights live, which increases the possibility of financial fraud. Will it be a threat? What Dana gave to the fighters was enough to deter them. Hours later, it was time for the press conference. It seemed late by about 20 minutes, but Islam, his smile, and the crowd's mad reactions were enough to make us forget that. We summarize for you the most important things we learned from that night. The popularity of Islam is greater than we thought, and everything he said was given a standing ovation by the crowd located in the hall, and it was nice to see Islam still receives the attention it deserves. The nightmare he had in Perth and Los Angeles, Jack received boos every time he spoke. In all honesty, he was very cool in every way. His responses, far removed from the conference atmosphere. I think this man has completely lost his passion for promoting UFC fights. Then the most important thing that happened in the popular conference, Chanko acquired it from social networking sites and translated it excellently on the ground, and his entry stole the hall lights from everyone who was on the stage, even Islam, and Islam made me laugh a lot in his attempt to correct the fans that it is called Chanko and not John Burke. He is the one who caused this disaster in the first place. Then Dana concluded the conference coolly and fatefully. The second encounter, which was completely different from the first in terms of tension between them. Here, they are not wearing heavy coats. Islam is not an outsider in this weight category. I was happy that the UFC brought him a belt for this conference. difference because he did not lose him inside the cage, but rather the damned Hunter Campbell grabbed him and that was it. Tonight, I did not like a gesture from Dana, who denied a few days ago that he leans to the right politically, where he attributed the booing that Jack received to the large Muslim community in New York and not to the growth in the popularity of Islam. Even though we were in the city where Trump always attends for the events of the UFC, it seems that he does not have the power now after Mamdani's election. Islam woke up in the earlier hours of Friday. The earlier the finishing touches, the easier the weight loss process. He fought it in his career, and then at the opening of the scales at 9 o'clock, he was waiting outside after Valentina, Willie, and Mikael Morales entered the official Libra stage. And there was a difference between his condition now that signed up death appear on him, lightweight, and this is how Islam reached the heroic weight with ease. Then he returned backstage to return the water to his body gradually. Then after more than an hour had passed, the hero, JD, arrived after failing by a small margin in the first attempt. Used the curtain to reach the heroic weight. Here I experienced a huge shock. Jack was without a shirt. After the water dried from his body, he seemed to be in a completely different weight class than Islam. This is the ideal build for a middleweight fighter, light to moderate, and stayed all that day, waiting for the latest confrontation show, hoping I was exaggerating how big JDM was. After 7 hours to restore fluids, the confrontations began. It seems that Islam has read the comments on social networking sites, and he was the only fighter who did not take off his shirt at this event. Then Jack sent a message by showing his preference of 6 centimeters in length and his arms. But Islam ignored that and wanted him to come closer, as Jack said earlier that week, but Islam is fighting for something much bigger. What Jack is fighting for is getting him back to the first classification in the pound for pound. Unfortunately, in one of the later interviews, Libra, as the booze continued to flow, Jack told Dana that this was coming back to the New York Muslim community. There were no fans except Muslims. That night, the smear campaigns against Islam began by this animal taxes after a wonderful start to this historic night. And then after that, a fantastic main card that we have finally arrived at. The main fight. Honestly, I was surprised when I saw Islam come first, as he took 3 years since he was a competitor first, and now with Aggressio, who were with him from day one. Habib, Usman, and Muslim finished in the lightweight category. He entered the next stage of 77 grams, and his first hero test with the man that they claim that has the secret of Crick Jones. And he was Crick. That morning, he had reposted those allegations. The thing is that Islam cheats in all his fights, but forget about that. After the introductions to Mad Press Puffer and the last confrontation, which is the ideal picture for the size difference between them, after a whole day of food and fluid recovery time is over. Talk, and we will now find out who the killer is and who was killed. For the quick start by Jack, Islam was able to easily remove it in the first minute, and after more than a minute of control, Jack tested Crick's first moves, and although they were successful for a moment, Islam took advantage her to go to his back and then control it until the end of the round when you throw yak. Illegal kick. In the second round, Islam was the initiator of standing combat, but when you threw it, you heard Jack for wrestling. In the end, Crick's most famous reversal led to Jack coming down to the mat with ease, and his expressions were enough to make her feel the pressure that Islam puts on her. Crick shouted instructions from the other side of the cage, "Has no life for whom you call," and Islam governed until the last seconds of this round when Jack returned to his feet after Habib tightened his grip. Not to enter into violent exchanges with Jack, Islam went to the third round and did the opposite. But in the second minute, Jack came down with all ease and sadness of Bilal over Canelo hands theory. And in the store, we made sure that his build is well suited for lightweight. The average person controlled Jack for 3 minutes, and none of the Crick Jones instructions we have entered will succeed. Heroic rounds, and Islam is ahead by 3 tours for nothing, and nothing separates him from that sheerly. He becomes a champion of a second weight category, unless Jack wins by finishing it in the last 2 rounds. But the poor thing was suffering by standing on the leg that Islam destroyed. He continues with his kicks, and then in the next minute, the second, with all ease, Islam returned to the rug, and he was controlling him as if he were a small child who had not yet reached the dream. Jack's voice was as if he was saying, "Damn it," to Crick Jones, with an expression of fatigue and suffering. The heavy hit on Jack entered the 5th round, as if he was saying to Islam, "Get me out of the situation I'm in." We say like this until the fight ended. Islam went straight to talk to Crick with one of the most dominant performances in history. Heroic fight. Islam entered the world of legends and brought his second title to become champion of 2 weight categories. And without a doubt, it has exceeded its date.